Hello, my name is Siboro, and today I'll be presenting my summary over the second topic for my wireless communications and convergence network course. And this week's topic is NGN policy challenges. So we know from my previous video that NGN is a new system. And so because it is a new system, a new set of policies is required. So for example, we know that the transport layer and the service layer are separate or separate entities. And so here in NGN or in services for NGN, there will be separate regulatory bodies for the content or the service and for the network or the transport layer. And for example, in Indonesia, the content, for example, for television is supervised or regulated by KPI. And the network is regulated by Dirjen Postel from the Ministry of Communication and Information. And there are some challenges with this new system for creating policies. And some of them are economic problems, access problems, interconnection, and spectrum management. So for economic, we know that providers would love to obtain as much profit as possible. And so we can observe that these providers will have competition against each other, and to attract more users, they will lower their prices. By lowering their prices, people are likely to be attracted to them instead of their competition. But the problem is, due to this, the quality of the services they're providing also decreases. And so in cases for cellular technology, for SMS or for calling, maybe it's not very apparent or it doesn't matter too much. But for example, for aviation, we may see budget airlines that compete with other budget airlines. And if we are going with this formula right here, it will be very dangerous for the passengers that will be going into these airplanes, because there may be some aspects from the airplane, for example, or from the services that are disregarded to lower the prices. And the next one is access. So as we know, countries do not usually have 100% coverage for the latest technology. So for example, if the latest technology is 5G, then maybe the densely populated area or the metropolitan area will get this technology, while the rural areas maybe get 3G or 4G. And this causes some problems because, as we know, NGN requires the latest technologies like fiber to the home, or 4G and 5G. And there's also the problem of interconnection. So interconnection in the past was done with switch networks. And now with NGN, we will need to switch to IP-based networks that uses packets to transfer data. The problem lies with addressing each user from the switch network into the IP-based network. And the next one is the spectrum management. So an efficient spectrum management is required because there are many services that require high bandwidth. And so due to this, a flexible spectrum management is required, which can result in improving the economic efficiency for providers, and it will be much easier for them to manage the resources they have. Okay, so this is a graph regarding the infrastructure competition in France, and this shows which areas are getting what technology. So here we can see that there is an area for fiber to the home, which is this area right here. And we can see that there are several fiber to the home connections with very similar bandwidth. But this only covers for 40% of the inhabitants, which are located in very dense areas. And so the rest of the inhabitants, the 60%, may only get copper cables or other technologies. They're not the latest technology. And we can also see here, even though they are getting copper cables, they're not getting a lot of bandwidth with the copper cables. We can see that in the very dense areas, it has about maybe 80 megabits of bandwidth, while when we go down above the 40% range, the 60% of the rest of the inhabitants may only get about 10 megabits, or maybe worse, about 1 megabits per second. And this is the problem we are addressing with accessibility for technology. And so there are some solutions to these problems. So some solutions are for the government to create policies so that people can get better access to NGN technologies. So for example, investing or giving incentives for providers for the latest technologies to reach the rural areas. And there are also economic regulations to regulate for healthy competition, because competition creates innovation. Why? Because each provider would like to be the best. They want to be better than the other providers. And so they want to create something better and something new to attract users. And so this healthy competition can be made by creating standards for QoS, quality of service, or prices, for example, so that we don't get the case where the prices are lowered, but the quality is also lowered as well. And there's also fiberization. What is fiberization? From the name itself, we know that fiberization means that the distribution or the spread of fiber technology or fiber to the home. And so it is required for fiberization to be given incentives for making the ducts or poles or the ways. And also it is required to ease restrictions, especially for areas, so that it would be easier to make ducts or poles in other areas that does not have fiber technology. And the next one is Universal Service Obligation, or USO. This means that providers are required to provide a minimum amount of service. So for example, in Europe, some services are capped at a maximum of 50 euros to make it more accessible to our people. And so this is how we can create or increase accessibility to new technologies to support NGN. And to address the interconnection problem from switching network to IP-based network, a new address system can be made by, for example, if your number was +1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, then we can change to an IP-based address. So for example, like an email, we can make it, for example, 1 2 3 4 add 5678.example.com. So before ending this video, I'd also like to address some other problems. So other problems include law interception and also fixed mobile convergence. So law interruption means obtaining information from the network, or basically when the police, for example, are trying to investigate something, and they require, for example, the call history, where they're calling, to whom they're calling. This poses a problem in a new system because it is very hard to identify what is contained in packets or what is used to transfer data in an IP-based network. And for fixed mobile convergence, so we know for fixed networks or switch networks, so our telephones, our landlines, they are using copper cables, and copper cables do not have a lot of bandwidth, while mobile has a lot of bandwidth. And so this poses a problem because when we are using our mobile phone, we're going to be using a lot of bandwidth, but when we're using our telephone, we are not. And so creating a convergence between these two is going to be hard because of the small bandwidth from the fixed network, and also the discrepancy of bandwidth between the fixed and mobile network. Thank you for listening to my summary, and God bless you.